We've all been there, right? That moment when you're in a social setting, feeling confident and at ease, and then suddenly your brain decides to take an unscheduled break. It's like your mind just hits the pause button at the worst possible time, leaving you standing there like a deer in headlights, completely frozen and unsure of what to do next. It's as if your mind is playing a cruel prank on you, and everyone around you is in on the joke except you. You can see the amusement in their eyes, the barely contained laughter, and you just know you're the punchline. One time this happened to me at a party. It was one of those lively gatherings where everyone is mingling, chatting and having a great time. The music was playing, the drinks were flowing, and the atmosphere was just perfect. I was in the middle of a conversation, feeling good and confident, when I suddenly needed to introduce my co-worker Sarah to a group of friends. It seemed like a simple task, right? Just say her name and make the introduction. But guess what? Her name completely flew out of my head. It was like someone had hit the delete button in my brain and all I could see was a blank space where her name should have been. I started to stammer, my face turning as red as a tomato. This is... I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks as I desperately tried to remember her name. The more I struggled, the more embarrassed I became. Sarah was standing there, smiling patiently, but I could tell she thought the whole situation was pretty funny. Her eyes were twinkling with amusement, and I could see the corners of her mouth twitching as she tried not to laugh. My brain was scrambling, trying to remember that simple three-letter word. It was like trying to find a needle in a haystack. I could feel the seconds ticking by, each one making the situation more awkward. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, it came to me. The fog in my brain lifted, and I could see her name clearly. "Sarah," I blurted out, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. "Sarah," I repeated, this time with more confidence. I felt like I had just won a small victory, and the relief was palpable. I could see the tension in my shoulders easing as I finally completed the introduction. Everyone around us burst into laughter, even Sarah, and I just wanted to disappear. It was one of those moments that you wish you could rewind and do over, but at the same time, it was a funny story to tell later. In the end, we all had a good laugh about it, and it became one of those memorable party moments that we still talk about to this day. People always say public speaking is their biggest fear. It's a common sentiment, and for good reason. The thought of standing in front of a crowd, all eyes on you, can be absolutely terrifying. Your heart races, palms get sweaty, and your mind starts to play tricks on you. It's like your body is preparing for some kind of battle. And you know what? They're right. The fear is real, and it's something many people experience. It's not just about the fear of speaking, it's the fear of being judged, of making a mistake, of forgetting your lines. It's a fear that can paralyze you. When your brain decides to stop working in front of a crowd, it's pure torture. You feel like you're in a nightmare, and there's no escape. Your mind goes blank and you can't remember a single word you were supposed to say. It's like your brain has betrayed you at the worst possible moment. Once I had to give a presentation to a ton of people. It was a big event, and I was one of the main speakers. The pressure was immense, and I knew I had to deliver a great speech. I spent weeks preparing, making sure every detail was perfect. I practiced 1,000,000 times, knew everything by heart, and felt ready to go. I rehearsed in front of the mirror, in front of friends, and even recorded myself to make sure I was hitting all the right notes. I was confident, or at least I thought I was. But as soon as I stood on stage, microphone in hand, my mind went totally blank. It was as if someone had hit the delete button on my brain. All the preparation, all the practice, it all disappeared in an instant. I was left standing there, staring at the audience with nothing to say. All those sentences I prepared, all the important things I wanted to say, just vanished. It was like they had never existed. I could see the concerned faces in the audience, and it only made things worse. The more I tried to remember, the more my mind seemed to shut down. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. It was as if my voice had been stolen. I could feel the panic rising, my heart pounding in my chest. I tried to force the words out, but they just wouldn't come. It was a feeling of complete helplessness. The silence felt like it lasted forever. Every second felt like an eternity. I could hear the ticking of the clock. each tick amplifying the silence. The audience's puzzled and concerned looks only added to the pressure. It was a moment I will never forget, a true case of the vanishing voice.
Breaking news.
Traveling to different countries is amazing. It's also a great chance for your brain to go haywire. I learned this the hard way on a trip to Italy. I had a few Italian phrases memorized, so I felt pretty confident walking into a cute little restaurant. I wanted a cappuccino, easy peasy, right? But when the waiter came up to me, my mind went blank. Instead of saying cappuccino, please, I blurted out, "Hey there, beautiful spaghetti carbonara." The waiter just stared at me, looking amused and confused at the same time. We all have days where we don't feel very stylish, but sometimes our brains decide to make our fashion mistakes even worse. One time I wore a shirt with a tiny stain on it. I didn't think it was noticeable at all. I went about my day, not even realizing. That is, until a nice lady decided to point it out. "Excuse me," she said, sounding super sympathetic. "You seem to have a little something on your shirt." My face turned bright red as I realized my mistake. Some brain fails are more public than others, like the time I accidentally sent a text to the wrong person. And not just any wrong person, but my boss. I had been complaining to my friend about work, and let's just say I didn't hold back. Feeling good after venting, I hit send without checking who it was going to. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed. It was my boss, and his message just said, "I see." My stomach dropped.
Check, check.
Section 6. Technology versus brain, a comedy of errors. Technology is supposed to make things easier, right? But sometimes it feels like our gadgets and our brains team up to create total chaos. Like the time I tried to impress my date by showing off my photography skills, or lack thereof. I aimed my phone at a beautiful sunset, but instead of taking a nice picture, I accidentally switched to selfie mode. The photo wasn't the romantic shot I had in mind. Instead, it was a close-up of my confused and blurry face lit up by the setting sun. Section 7. The phantom food order. We've all been there. You're at a restaurant, starving and ready to eat. Your stomach is growling and you can almost taste the delicious food you're about to order. The anticipation is building up and you can't wait to satisfy your hunger. The waiter comes up ready to take your order and your mind goes completely blank. It's as if all the dishes you had in mind just vanished into thin air. You start to panic a little, trying to recall that one dish you were so excited about. You forget what you wanted. You flip through the menu pages frantically, hoping something will jog your memory. But nothing seems familiar and the pressure is mounting as the waiter patiently waits. This happened to me the other day. I had been thinking about this specific dish all day long. I could almost taste it, and my mouth was watering just at the thought of it. I had been craving this specific dish all day, imagining how it would look and taste. I could see it in my mind's eye, perfectly plated and ready to be devoured. But when it was my turn to order, I couldn't remember what it was called. My mind was a complete blank, and I felt a wave of embarrassment wash over me. I stammered, I stuttered, trying to piece together any clue that might help me remember. I could feel the eyes of the other diners on me, adding to my anxiety. I even tried to describe it with my hands. I gestured wildly, hoping the waiter would somehow understand my vague descriptions. "It has this sauce," I said, making a pouring motion, "and it's kind of spicy," I added, waving my hands around. The waiter was super patient and waited while I struggled. He smiled kindly, nodding as if he understood, but I could tell he was just being polite. Finally, I just pointed to something random on the menu and said, "I'll have that." It wasn't what I'd been craving, but at that point, I just wanted to end the ordeal. When the food arrived, it was delicious, but I couldn't help but laugh at myself for forgetting my original choice. So the next time you find yourself in a similar situation, just remember you're not alone. We've all experienced the phantom food order at some point. And who knows, you might end up discovering a new favourite dish by accident. Section 8. The Great Misinterpretation. Sometimes, our brains misunderstand things, which leads to awkward moments and funny mix-ups. I had one of those moments at a coffee shop. I was waiting in line, totally engrossed in my book. Suddenly, someone tapped me on the shoulder. I looked up to see a woman smiling at me. "He's ready for you now," she said, pointing to a guy sitting at a table. I was so confused. "I'm sorry," I asked. The woman's smile faded. "The blind date?" she said, sounding unsure. That's when I realized my mistake. Section 9. Embracing the brain farts. As embarrassing and annoying as they can be, these brain fails also remind us that we're all human. They're funny moments that we can all relate to and laugh about together. So the next time your brain decides to take a break, don't be too hard on yourself. Laugh it off and remember that even the most put-together people have these funny mental hiccups. Life's too short to take ourselves too seriously. And who knows, your brain fart might just turn into a great story someday.